back in 2011, the Union of Concerned Scientists came out with a report, and they called it Nuclear Power, Still Not Viable Without Subsidies. And the report stated that in some cases, subsidies for the reactors actually exceeded the value of the electricity that was produced. So I live in Columbus, Ohio. And so I'll go and I'll start talking about the bailouts in our state. And what Gail was talking about was the infamous House Bill 6 was the number of the bill. And that bails out First Energy's aging, embrittled nuclear plants. It's Davis-Besse and Perry. They're both on Lake Erie, and it's about $1.3 billion. But it's really basically just a gift to First Energy because there aren't any strings attached to the bill. So it was illegal for Ohio to directly subsidize any particular energy source. So Ohio Republicans crafted House Bill 6 as the Ohio Clean Air Program. And the word nuclear is not in the bill. And besides bailing out the 2 nuclear plants, it bails out 2 First Energy coal plants. And these are old, really old, very hyper-polluting coal plants on the Ohio River. One of them is actually in Indiana. Believe it or not, we're bailing out a coal plant in Indiana. It guts renewable energy standards and abandons Ohio's efficiency standards. And so far, Ohio's efficiency standards have saved Ohioans $5.1 billion was calculated by Ned Ford. So House Bill 6, it was passed under some very unusual and very suspect circumstances. I'll say that Ohio is really close to evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats as far as voters are concerned. But due to the gerrymandering, Republicans have 60 of 99 members in the House and 24 out of 33 in the Senate. The bill couldn't have passed without the support of some Democrats because there were several free market Republicans who voted against it. So unlike most industry-backed proposals, House Bill 6, it was almost universally badmouthed by the media here in Ohio. It was opposed by ratepayer groups and business groups, and as I said, the free market conservatives and environmental groups. And I testified against it several times at the State House, and the only proponents there were those with actually vested interests. The legislature had recessed for the summer before the bill passed, but they were called back to vote on House Bill 6, and it passed by 1 vote. So our stance is actually communities and workers need aid, but not bailing out corporations, dirty industries, and especially not dishonest, terribly dishonest ones. So there was an attempt to get a referendum on the Ohio ballot to overturn House Bill 6. And millions of dollars in dark money was put into defeating that referendum. Firms were hired to harass and intimidate signature gatherers. Ohio was blanketed with fake petitions, so the people were confused about what they were signing. There were really strange ads just filled the media, and I got a number of mailers at my house. There was so much xenophobia, it was just really thick. It threatened a Chinese conspiracy to take over the energy grid, and I actually said that. A Chinese conspiracy to take over our energy grid. Later, it was found that First Energy paid most of the major signature gathering companies in Ohio to not gather signatures against House Bill 6. So the 90-day signature gathering time that they were allowed was shortened by 38 days while the ballot language was being approved. And the Ohio Supreme Court just sat on the request to reinstate the days. And so in January 2020, the petition drive ended. And so that was it. And then the following May, Energy Harbor, who was the new reactor owner, announced that they were adding $300 million to their annual share buyback. So instead of, that's what they did with their money, they were putting it into shareholder buyback. And that had a total of $800 million that year. A bit of background on First Energy and the new entity, Energy Harbor, that I just mentioned. First Energy really made out like a bandit in bankruptcy court. Because they divested themselves of liability. Their subsidiary, First Energy Solutions, which had owned the plant, came out of bankruptcy with a new name, Energy Harbor LLC, a limited liability corporation. So First Energy itself, as the distributor, is now completely separate from Energy Harbor. So they no longer have any liability. And First Energy was allowed to pay its bankruptcy expenses before distributing their assets to creditors. So they kind of really made out there in the bankruptcy court. So then just about exactly a year after House Bill 6 passed, the Ohio House Speaker, Larry Householder, and 4 others, men, were arrested on this $600 million bribery and racketeering scheme that Gail talked about surrounding House Bill 6. So $61 million in dark money was illegally funded into nonprofit groups by First Energy, and that was used to fund the election of legislators who were favorable to the passage of the bailout, and also, of course, used for stopping the subsequent repeal attempt. So since the arrests, then a whole plethora of things that revealed unsavory conduct, revelations we've had. So I've put in the chat a link to a paper listing these items. I'm going to put that in the chat now. There are hyperlinks in the document that go to articles on some of the events. So let me see if I can get that in the chat here. Okay, that's for y'all to have fun looking at. Okay, so some of the revelations. Well, first thing happened was the FBI, they subpoenaed Ohio House records related to 4 other bills that aimed to bail out nuclear plants. Then First Energy ousted CEO Chuck Jones and 2 other executives, plus top legal ethics officers. First Energy filed a motion to prevent executive deposition in the bribery investigation. Ohio's Attorney General, David Yost, sued and was backed up by the Ohio Supreme Court to stop collection and payment of the bailout money. An Ohio federal court ruled that Ohio ratepayers can proceed with the class action suit against First Energy, even though the state court already blocked the company from accepting fees. Now, Ohio's governor, Mike DeWine, he's been the recipient of many kinds of largesse from First Energy, including there was money, they gave money for his daughter's political race. Then a big deal was when the FBI raided the home of Sam Randazzo, who was the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, the PUCO chair, appointed by Governor DeWine. The FBI found that First Energy had paid $4.3 million to Randazzo's consulting firm at the time when he was acting as the Ohio regulator. So that scoundrel Randazzo, who had done everything he could to undercut licensing and siting of renewables, he resigned. And since that time, the Environmental Law and Policy Center has filed a motion to invalidate orders by the commission, by the PUCO during Randazzo's tenure. First Energy actually obtained limited liability waivers from its lenders that struck down provisions in their loan agreements that required compliance with anti-corruption laws. And I'm not sure if such a thing is actually legal, but that's what happened. Last September, an auditor who examined First Energy's internal audit after the bribery arrests, he observed potential securities violations. And so he forwarded that information to the SEC. Now, the auditor is accusing First Energy of whistleblower retaliation. And the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, they have subsequently opened an investigation into First Energy about, concerning the revelations, but the exact scope of all that, we don't know what that's about. Then the Public Utilities Commission issued a request for proposals looking for firms to audit First Energy's distribution modernization rider funds. And this rider was established in 2017, and 2 years later it was deemed illegal by the Ohio Supreme Court, but not before the company had collected about $200 million a year in improper funds, and they weren't subjected to be refunded. They weren't subject to be refunded. So the courts ruled that First Energy does not have to pay back that money. And now the PUCO is exploring whether those funds were improperly used to support House Bill 6. In order to avoid a shareholder resolution, First Energy made an agreement with a New York pension fund, which was its largest shareholder, and that was to issue a public report disclosing its political expenditures for at least the next 3 years. The Cleveland Plain Dealer had an article that said it shouldn't take a New York pension fund to force First Energy political spending more into the open. It's like, why wasn't Ohio asking them? So last month, Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose filed 162 different campaign finance charges against Larry Householder and 4 political operatives, the ones that were arrested. And Householder is accused of using $950,000 of his campaign funds to pay his defense lawyers since the bailout, since there were the arrests. And House Bill 6 tentacles reach to the governor's office. They show that Sam Randazzo, that resigned PUCO chair, met with Householder, the speaker, and the governor in April of 2019. They met at DeWine's house for an energy discussion, and House Bill 6 was introduced the very next day. So I guess the last thing I want to say is that the Ohio legislature has dragged its feet, to say the least, in repealing House Bill 6. The first repeal bills all died at the end of 2020. And in the new legislature, full repeal bills and a number of partial repeal bills have been introduced. And as of yesterday, March 24th, both houses have passed House Bill 128. And it is a bill that removes, as far as we can tell, only removes the nuclear subsidy. Now, Speaker Householder voted for this bill, but in a strange twist of fate, First Energy had already asked not to receive the bailout because, some of you may have heard, there was a FERC, a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They filed a minimum offer price rule, which meant that First Energy would have to charge more money for electricity if they were state subsidized in the auction. So, uh, so First Energy really didn't want the nuclear bailout. So we think maybe the legislature might be playing into First Energy's hands if the coal bailout, which is indirect, and renewable and efficiency standards, the abandonment of those, if that remains in force. So I'll stop here, but I'll just add that First Energy stock was cut to junk rate, junk rate by all three major rating firms.